It's Saturday night. We're in Charlotte, North Carolina, and you're watching the PGA Championship for Dummies, starring dumb and frequently dumber. Thankfully, we're joined by Brian Keogh, who has always been one of the sharpest knives in the drawer. Brian, I've got some questions for you. This is really puzzling to me. So, Rory McIlroy arrives this morning at 5:22 at the golf course. He does his stretching and his gym work. He starts that at 5:45 for about an hour. He has some breakfast. He goes to the range and he starts his warm-up for his 8:25 tee time. And this is good, right? It's good for him to be going off early on a Saturday morning on the third round of a major.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when we arrived at that time this morning, zero wind, calm, warm, perfect greens, just being cut. It's perfect, for Rory McIlroy to go out and maybe shoot a score, maybe post something that will get him somewhat into the tournament. So yeah, it's all set up nicely.
And he's playing with Xander Schauffele again. That's the draw.
He's playing with Xander Schauffele again, yeah.
So then the weather warning sounds and he's brought off the range, goes back into the clubhouse until the lightning, the risk of lightning is gone.
Yeah.
He comes back out then and resumes his warm-up, has completed that and is walking across the walkway towards the first tee at, I would say, 8:15 when the weather warning sounds again. And there's some clips of it, I don't know if you've seen them on Twitter, where he mouths, it's like something I say when I'm watching the Tour de France, two words starting with F and finishing with O. So he's not happy.
No. I mean, you're up at, if he has to be here at 5:30, where he must have been up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
3 hours, yeah, absolutely.
At least 3 hours before his tea time. So he obviously knows it's going to be a delay, and the delay went on for several hours,
right.
over 3 hours.
This is the thing. So he's going to tee. This happens. He goes back into the clubhouse.
Yeah.
He goes back into the clubhouse at 8:15. He comes out of the clubhouse at 9:10, dressed in civvies, and I'm looking and thinking, what's going on here? And he says that they've redone the draw.
Yeah.
And he is now, from going out second, he's now going out second last.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah. So they're trying to get the tournament finished. They're worried about light. They're gonna be delayed by several hours. So say, well, in order to get these guys finished, 74, 75 players have made the cut. How are we gonna do it? Well, let's put them in threes. Let's send them off both tees and do what is called a U draw. And it gives them a chance then to get everybody finished, which they did. Just about, it was getting twilight as they were finishing. But if they'd gone in two balls off the first, they'd never go.
Right. So now they added another player to his group.
They had another player.
Chris Kirk.
Chris Kirk. So it's 3 balls then, and they put him out in a featured group, and he's at a 138.
How is that fair?
Yeah. Well,
it's supposed to be a fair game, right?
It's supposed to be a fair game, but they have to try and get the German.
But they grew up with wood on the ball and playing out of divots, and how is that fair? That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, and if there's another weather delay tomorrow, maybe they decide, geez, it might be better off having placing after all. I did that before a few years ago, just to get the tournament finished. But no, not a good, a long day.
A long day, and I followed most of it, and he came off, and he was tired. He looked tired. He walked into the recorder's hut. There were several requests, a good deal of requests. I know a lot of guys were gathered there wanting to talk to.
Yeah.
And for the third day in a row, he wasn't prepared to talk, or didn't want to talk to the media.
Which was understandable, I think.
For what?
Well, there was a lot of talk, obviously, on Friday evening about the fact that he was one of the players, well, there were several, who had a non-performing driver.
Okay.
So let's
we spoke about that last night.
Yeah.
Now, Brian, we sat here last night and there was an issue with a driver, Rory's driver. The story had broken earlier in the day on, is it Sirius?
On Sirius XM.
What is Sirius XM?
So Sirius XM is a digital radio station. They cover all sorts of things, including sport, all sorts of sport, including golf. So they have a contract with the PGA Tour.
Okay.
So on your PGA Tour app,
so
you can turn on the
affiliation.
Radio. Yeah, and they're covering
PGA Tour.
And they're covering this tournament this week.
Okay. So the story they broke or was it even broke? I don't know. Someone heard, anyway,
Yeah.
they were talking about Rory's driver and the fact that he had changed the head
Yes.
on the driver on Tuesday.
And they weren't sure initially, whether it was because it was cracked or what it was, but it turned out they confirmed.
And as I said last night, I was with him on Tuesday.
Yeah.
He told me it was worn, and they were changing the head of the driver.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As it turned out, the PGA of America asked the USGA to come in to this tournament and do random testing of the players' equipment just to make sure that everything is within the different rules, the conformity, especially for drivers. So what they do is they take a third of the field.
Yeah.
This is 156, and they take 52 guys. They check their equipment.
And as we said last night, if the driver face is thinning, it gets more of a trampoline effect, and that's when it gets into the area of non-conformance.
Exactly, and it can happen between one drive and the next, so it can be perfectly fine. And then if you hit one of these drivers 5,000 times with the force these guys hit it can thin. It might last you 3 years at our speeds.
So basically,
but these guys, it might last them only three or 4 months.
So
and their driver, their favorite driver, is suddenly going, this is going a little bit faster than it normally does, but they don't really know. They haven't got the equipment. So the USGA checks it out.
Yeah, and they say, okay,
Rory,
you need
you're
to
just
change.
a bit over.
You're a bit over. You need to change that. So, so why is this a story? If this happens all the time, why is this a story that an affiliate of the PGA Tour would put out on the radio channel, naming Rory McIlroy having changed his driver because it was non-conforming? Because for people who don't know the game, and we've seen what's happened since then, this kind of explosion on Twitter, all these gobshites talking about cheating, that he was chancing his arm and what's going on. Why would Sirius XM? Why is it a story?
Because it's confidential. They tell the players that they don't make it public because people, the man on the street who doesn't follow golf and understand that these things happen to equipment. It's just metal fatigue, something that happens. It's not something the players are trying to gain an advantage of because they're not even aware.
But why is it a story though? I don't understand why the radio guys think this is a story.
That Rory had to change his driver because it's not conforming when they should, when they're not. It's never revealed publicly.
Absolutely.
So it shouldn't have been revealed publicly. This is the problem.
And so today then, but 3 minutes after Rory teed off.
Yeah, exactly 3 minutes.
The PGA of America issue a statement.
Right.
And they're talking about this. And I have the statement here, and they say, finding driver heads that have crept over the line of conformance is not an unusual occurrence, especially for clubs that are hit thousands of times over a long period of time. The results are kept confidential to protect players who are unaware the club has fallen out of conformance and not responsible for it falling out of conformance, other than hitting the club thousands of times. Players are simply asked to change heads if necessary, and all do without issue. To publicly identify players whose club did not conform can lead to that player being questioned unnecessarily. Neither the USGA nor the PGA of America have any concerns about player intent. Now,
These guys are not trying to pull a fast one.
Exactly. Now, why don't they state in that statement that they tested what? Third of the field?
They tested 50
odd. They don't say how many players.
No.
Why not?
Yeah.
Because a
It should
player,
be a bit more transparent.
a player has been named.
Yes.
One player has been named, and I have been told there are at least 10 players weren't performing, and that there were some very big names among those 10 players. So why the lack of transparency?
This is true, and this is a question that has to be answered by the USPA and the RNA and these people. That they should, let's just go ahead and say, look, these were the people whose drivers were non-conforming, and then everybody knows. And it's not, as I said, there's no intent.
Because there's previous. I mean, Rory played with Xander Schauffele today.
Exactly.
And you tell us, Brian, what happened?
Well, I mean, at the Open in 2019, Xander Schauffele, it emerged, the news leaked out that Xander Schauffele's driver was non-conforming, and he was extremely annoyed. He blamed the RNA.
Yeah.
He sort of said, thanks lads for throwing me under the bus. As it turned out, the testing was going on, might have been a door open, a caddy could have been passing by. Suddenly the news spreads across the range like wildfire, and a fellow player, Joe Coastley, sort of says to Schauffele, here he is, the cheater. Of course, when I'm trying to show up for Roy, one, he can't use his favourite driver because he doesn't know it's gone over the limit, so he's annoyed about that.
Yeah.
So he has to put in something else that he hasn't been using. And secondly, he's suddenly been named, and people who don't understand these very intricate, subtle little rules about spring-like effector, so they're saying, oh look, he was using a dodgy driver.
Right.
And so it's a bit of a grey area, and you feel sorry for Rory this week, having to change the driver.
But the point I don't understand is, like, I went back and looked at Schauffele and what he said about it. He was steaming, rightly so, and made some very pertinent points about how unfair it was, and yet they've done nothing since.
Yeah.
Here we have another example of it today.
On the PGA Tour, they're very careful not to reveal anybody's names when it comes to maybe the governing bodies, and things start to come out of it. A bit more.
Well, justifiably, because it's not like they're doing nothing wrong.
Yeah. No, they're not doing anything wrong. So you can understand Rory not really being in the mood to talk.
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
We don't know why.
I don't know if that's the reason for it. I would suspect it might be, given some of the shite that's out there and what's being said.
He's disappointed. Yeah. I mean, he's 70th for driving accuracy this week.
Yeah.
He doesn't often hit a huge number of fairways. It's the distance that he gets. He's way up there for strokes gained driving, but he's been to the practice for strokes gained driving. That's been part of the problem.
Well, I don't think his driving has been great all year, to be fair. Anyway, let's move on. Now, Brian, I was watching the start of live from the PGA Championships on the Golf Channel, and Brandon Chambly and Paul McGinley were very, very excited. Why were they so excited? What I heard was the game being played as well as it's being played. He turned the green mile into the green smile.
Yeah. World number one, Scottie Sheffler, 65, 6 under par, finished brilliantly, and he eagled the 14th, hit it to about 2.5 feet. Then he birdies the 15th, misses about a 10-footer on the 16th for another birdie, knocks in an 18-footer on the 17th, and he hits it in divot on the last. Hits it to 80 feet and knocks it in as well. And the tournament was very tight just before all that happened. And then all of a sudden, Scottie Sheffler, 65, and he's 3 shots there. Green coming to the top.
Right, and let's look at now the leaderboard. He's 3 shots clear from Alex Noren, Davis Riley, JT Poston, 4 ahead of JT Poston, and 5 ahead of John Rahm.
And others. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of excitement today. You had Bryson DeChambeau, going great guns early on, and then he has a bit of a bad finish. Bogey 6, he hits it in the water on 17. He's all of a sudden, he's 5 under, he's 6 behind, and he was looking like he was leading at one stage.
Right.
Then you had John Rahm come along. Same again, birdies 14, birdies 15, birdies 16, bogey 17. He gets to 6 under. He's right there, he's only a couple behind. You've got a few of the lesser lights as well still up there, but then Scheffler does when Alex Noren then shoots 66. Amazing. 42. Hasn't played for 7. Played one event in the last 7 months. Hamstring injury. All of a sudden you turn up and bang. 66 in the major. He's 3 behind in the final group.
Crazy.
And Scheffler. How do you explain that? He's just he's the world number 1. And he played like the world number 1 today.
Brian, it's your job to explain it, but we'll let you do more explaining tomorrow night when we return on PGA Championship for Dummies. Thanks for tuning in.